Hello, this is Level with Me. This is my show where I play through games and talk about what I think the level design and environment art and lighting and stuff we're doing. And we are playing Half-Life 2, Episode 1 for a little while. I'll try to finish it uh, just because Half-Life 2s are dear to my heart. So um, let's see. Last time we got. Let's see. Where were we? Right here. So last week we were in. Oh, we were doing this. Whatever this was. We were in Combine Citadel, the giant alien metal tower in the middle of some random city in Eastern Europe, and we are trying to I think the story is that we're trying to get to the center of this giant technological alien skyscraper so that we can shut down the reactor, or else the reactor is gonna kill everyone or something. I think that's what's going on. And the main conceit and gimmick of this chapter is that we have this character right here. Oh, sorry. We have this character right here. Her name is Alex, and she's like our sidekick, and she follows us around. And we're learning how all the different machinery in this place works. So let's keep going. So we spent about an hour doing all this stuff, and
Gordon? What's going on in
just
there?
got caught in a trap, which is actually a repeat of a trap that happened in the main Half-Life 2 game. Oh god.
It looks like it did in Brink's portal reactor.
And now we have this. And now we have this super gravity gun thing, and we'll see what it does. Now you'll notice here the level design. Also, if you see like a bunch of error messages like in the top left of the screen, those won't usually appear. I just have developer mode enabled so I can show you some cool stuff every now and then. But for the most part, ignore those tech error messages. But here we can see one common theme I'm going to be returning to a lot over and over throughout the next month or two, is that episode 1 is kind of ugly, and also the original Half-Life 2 is kind of ugly, partly because Valve, they updated the source engine and then they had to recompile all the maps for the source engine, but they didn't actually go back and retune the lighting because that would have been way too much work. So what we get is just lighting that looks like there's like no bouncing going on. Lighting where it just looks really like harsh and really just bloomy, and it doesn't capture the nice subtlety that the original version had, which is a shame. It's almost like it's like a remaster, but like in the opposite direction. And someone in the chat, Space Spax52, asks, why didn't they just leave the lighting as it was? LOL. And
We need to get across here.
it's she's getting impatient. That's a boring reason. They updated the BSP file format for the new game engine, so they couldn't keep the old maps. And because they couldn't keep the old maps, they had to rebake everything. And turns out, actually, this scene looks kind of good. The bloominess is nice, but a lot of other spaces, like that hallway back there, just don't look very good anymore. Okay, so I believe this scene is about teaching you to use these combine balls. So this is something that Valve's usually pretty good at, where it's like a tutorial, but it's like an unspoken tutorial. So you're supposed to try to learn this mechanic. There's like a few things going for this space where they just have a bunch of energy balls floating around. So if you just try to click on one of them, like, well, wait for a few more to shoot out. If you just like try to click on, you're gonna accidentally like pick up one, and you're gonna be like, oh, if I can accidentally pick up one, what if I shoot it at that thing? And then it turns out that's the right thing. You have to fill up the sockets here and learn how that whole combine ball energy charging mechanic works. One bad thing that isn't so good with this design is that it's not very colorblind friendly. Here you can see that it was very dependent on the green and red color contrast, and I believe about 10 or 15% of population, especially among men, suffer, well, not suffer, have red-green color blindness. So they can't distinguish between those colors much. So usually, one good rule of thumb when you're doing level design is don't rely too much on green-red contrast, because that's not super accessible to your player base. Here I'm able to use the gravity gun to just pull soldiers out, which is what you can do. You can like pull their bodies around, pull their ragdolls around. It's pretty fun. This is a repeat of what happened back in the original Half-Life 2, where we had this supercharged gun at the very end of the game, and we were able to like, oh gosh, we were able to use this supercharged energy gun and basically just plow through like a million dudes. Now we have to do the same thing again, except this time it's a little bit under pressure, because now we're scared that these Combine soldiers will come out and mess everything up. But it's basically just a repeat of the same challenge. A lot of the same level design principles as games like Portal, if you play Portal, where it gives you a basic version of a puzzle, and then you have to do a slightly more complicated version, and it builds up the iterations of difficulty as you go. They also do this cool thing that I like a little bit here. Oh my god, where they have soldiers spawn behind you and use the bridge that you just built. One cool thing would have been if you could disable the bridge now, but maybe that's too much for like a tutorial thing. So you could like close the door behind you. But here you can see, yeah, they're just really upping the difficulty slightly, where you can charge that one, but now that one is behind a glass wall, so it's like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? Oh, and they're just spawning all these soldiers everywhere around you. I feel like the soldiers here act sort of as like an indirect timer here, where our health is going down. I'll have to be sneakier, which I do. Maybe I have to do something. I have to run over here instead. And now I can shoot this asshole. No, I can't. Ah. Is there a window over here that I can use? I can do this thing. There we go. One interesting thing I'd have to wonder about is, well, I think it's interesting at least, is that I had difficulty with that puzzle because I didn't really know that there was like this platform here. And once you walk over here, it's kind of pitch black what's going on here, right? It's kind of difficult to see what's going on. I think if you really wanted it to be obvious, you would have lit this alcove more prominently so that the player could see that there was a passage here, or just did more with the silhouette here. But I also wonder if this is partly a lighting problem, where in the previous versions of this map, maybe the lighting was splashed around a little bit better and it was easier to read all these shapes and stuff. So I feel like that was clearly the intended solution, personally, just because, I mean, we could have tried to shoot the ball so it bounced perfectly behind that window, but I feel like with the way this sticks out so much, means it's so easy for us to jump here. Also, they added AI pathing to have Alex jump between these, which is pretty cool. Jumping with enemies is actually still pretty rare in games, so when people still do it, when NPCs do it, it's still kind of miraculous to me. Anyway, let's keep going. Duck here. I guess this is like a little tutorial to make sure you knew how to duck. Also, Alex ducked underneath, which was cool. Have to keep going. And the thing they're trying to convey with all these like little wreckage vignettes, I would guess, is that it's trying to show how this whole place is falling apart. So it's meant to add a little bit of urgency. In the chat, someone asks, Alex AI was one of the big goals for these games, right? Yes, episode 1, a lot of it was dedicated to making her feel more capable, feel like a better sidekick. But the scenes we saw just now where Alex was jumping around actually aren't that special or unique. Like the generic civilian AI in the original Half-Life 2 could jump around. That's more on the level designer to place the little hint objects that tell Alex where she can go. Look at all the spark effects. Oh no! Poor little ship.
Did you see that?
Did you see that? But that's a little bit silly for a video game to say, did you see that? That's like level designer anxiety. You see all the work I put into that scripted sequence? This is the wrong way. This is also repeated from the previous game where anytime you saw these like mechanical camera lock things, you would need to bring her over to unlock it. So it's nice that there's continuity of mechanics. Oh my god. Wait, what's the core? Is the core this shape that I've never seen before? Is that the logo for the core? And it turns out it is. I actually, graphic design wise, I actually don't like the core logo. I feel like it doesn't fit with the rest of the Combine graphic design aesthetic. I feel like this Photoshop like warp thing around the core, I don't know if that's quite in the Combine vernacular. I don't think the Combine graphic designers, whoever they are, would actually like curve their lettering like this. It just feels a little bit off. It doesn't feel consistent, at least to me. If you're more of a graphic designer, maybe you have better terminology to explain why it feels. So now we have to use this power socket. Go in there.
We must be on the right track. Look up! Watch out!
Look up.
God.
So,
Look up! Watch out!
what happens there is that if you don't
Here comes more.
shoot the wreckage, then it it breaks the elevator, and then Alex ragdolls and you all die.
Watch out! Here comes more.
Look at all these physics objects raining down. It's raining. It's not raining men. It's raining wreckage.
Heads up!
Oh, we died. Well, I didn't die. I actually landed safely on that ledge. I think one This whole sequence feels a little bit silly and
Heads up.
funny to me. Just partly because of the whole, like, just the lack of impact with, like, disaster destroying and killing everyone.
Can you get it going again?
It just feels a little bit silly to me. Feels really weightless. Oh no. There's a window in the way. How do I... Oh, and then you have to move those consoles out of the way. So now we have to grab one of these Sparky boys. Shoot it in there, and it'll ricochet in there. Looks like she's rolling her eyes at me, but actually she's looking up. Now, looking up is actually one of the most... We're getting the play... Oops. A little bit slow on that. Getting the player to look up is one of the most difficult things. Even when there's a character literally pointing up and telling you to look up, I still don't really consistently do it. Oops. Okay, I'll try to pay more attention to this.
Up there.
Yeah, the particle effects, oops, that just crushed me directly. The tricky thing with this is that if you try to click too early, then you're actually out of range to vaporize the prop. Oh, wait, what? I thought I got that one. So you have to wait until it's just close enough, and then you can actually vaporize it.
Up there.
There we go. Oh. Oops.
Up there.
Oh, oops.
Up there.
Oh, oops.
There.
Oh, oops.
Up there.
Yeah, it's kind of like a physics-based QTE that I just keep failing for whatever reason. There we go.
Start her up again, Gordon. Do what you did last time.
What you did last time. Gee whiz. Yeah, if you see little text messages floating in the world, that's not intended. That was not intended by the developer. Ignore that. That's just because I have the developer turned on. Okay, there we go.
What's going on?
Oh no. So now they're repeating a thing from last week, where anytime we see these stalker enemies, they're gonna shoot the little red laser and like undo whatever progress we made on the puzzle, which is theoretically kind of interesting. This is something I wish puzzle games actually did a lot more of, which is every time you try to solve a puzzle, the puzzle would like push back on you and like try to unsolve itself, which is cool in theory. Here it's just kind of a little bit, I would argue a little bit like weightless and doesn't feel super meaningful, just because to shoot that stalker, I just had to assume that the ball would like ricochet somehow, and I don't really have a good viewpoint on what's going on here. It's just a big bright white light, partly so you would see the silhouette of the stalker and it would be super obvious. But when you make this whole back wall a big white light, I actually can't see what's going on there. So I don't know, it feels like I was just shooting it randomly and then there was some kind of hack to make sure I always got it in there. I don't know.
Good job. Here we go. We're really moving now.
She almost looked up. Did you see something? No.
I think I see a stop down below. Let's get off there and see where it leads.
Uh-oh, what's all this wreckage? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh my god. Barely escaped.
Oh,
That was close. Yeah, like this just... the whole thing about video games doing and eyeing at themselves, I think, does not age well anymore. But remember, back in 2006, pretty impressive, right? That characters are like noticing things in the world. Characters have like the same reaction that we might have as players. That was definitely cooler back then. But now the worst version of that is like the new Borderlands 3, where everyone's like, "Oh, badass, badass, that was awesome. Oh, I can't believe we have to backtrack again. I can't believe we have to backtrack again," right? And when a game lampshades that's the TV tropes word for it, lampshading. You know, it doesn't work, as I think. Gamers have gotten smarter, right? What's he shooting at? Oh, you didn't even see all these. As we go through all these different rooms, oh, am I too quiet? Here, let me bring the sound down a little bit.
I don't get it. Why are they hanging around?
Here, I'll bring it down a little bit more too. I mean, it's just because there's a siren. Sirens are loud, right?
It looks like they were deliberately trying to blow the reactor. But why?
So you'll notice that we got like Half-Life 2, one like hallmark of Valve style level design is to just pace all the encounters and space everything out. So we do a little bit of platforming, we have a little fun set piece, we fight some enemies, and then we do something else, and then we fight some enemies, and then we do something else and fight some enemies. So this constant variation is kind of fun and cool, but also to me it feels a little bit like impatient with me as well, personally. I don't know. But certainly one school of level design that a lot of people still follow, I think. Now, this is also another classic patented Valve Half-Life 2 technique, where this is what's called a vista internally. A vista is when you look over the area where you're about to traverse. And in this case, the vista is also, yes, this fancy graphics thing that Tinkel points out. It's a new effect that they made just for episode 1, where it's this fancy refracting dynamic mesh thing going on. It's pretty fancy. It still looks pretty cool, I think. And I like how it's constantly changing colors too. So it's giving off this like very hot effect, right? It's orange and blue. It's like staring at like the root of a flame almost. So it feels hot. Feels like this weird hot jelly thing. Definitely looks dangerous. Hot jelly. Watch out. Let's keep going. You see a camera view about where we're going to be going to.
I can call it back to this level. These readings are off the chart. I hope it's not too late to re-engage the containment field. Good thing you know what you're doing. Well, here's your elevator.
So a lot of cute like callbacks here going
I
on
wish there was something else I could do
to
help.
the attentive Half-Life 2 fan. The Half-Life 2 fanboy would recognize this whole set piece where Alex is standing at a computer doing something, and then we have to go into some elevator without her to do something. So that's like the end of finale of Half-Life 2. But also when she quips that you know what you're doing, good thing you know what you're doing. This is also kind of a subtle callback back to Half-Life 1, where all the NPCs treat the player character as someone who's incredibly competent and knows what they're doing, when in reality we have the knowledge of a player. I think they reused her animation in Half-Life 2 too. when in reality we don't really know what we're doing. We don't really even really know what the objective is. We have to do some kind of containment. I don't know, it's not quite clear. I really like this effect they have going on here. Nice bloom. Here's actually where the overblown bloomy effect back from the episode 2 update that I've been complaining about in other places actually works pretty well here. And now here's like a big puzzle room. Might remind you of Portal. It might also remind you of Mirror's Edge, the Mirror's Edge sequel, where they actually have a bunch of these puzzle towers where you have to go inside and parkour up and down them. And then here's kind of like the finale set piece, where it's culminating in all these different mechanics we've learned, and we have to learn how to put all these things together. So we've learned to do this, and we've learned we have to turn on these bridges by powering up these sockets. But every time we do this, we see a red laser from a nearby stalker enemy. And then we also hear an alarm to show that our progress has been undone. So now we know, okay, we have to get rid of these stalker enemies so that they don't undo our progress. And then we have to find the other light socket. Oh, there's the other light socket. Oh, oops. To stand out here so we have a better angle on it. Now, here we go. Now more reactor cores. Shoot. Now that we have a better perspective, where before this giant wall thing was blocking our view of it, but now that we stand here, we have a perfect view of all these little light socket things. And that's like a very classic Portal level design thing, right? Where it's really playing with your lines of sight and trying to get you to reason about where you have to go to get good line of sight on something. Let's run over here, I guess, now. In the chat, Toasty asks, with the username, what is this bridge system, LOL? Like, who uses it normally? And the answer is no one. No one uses it. The player uses it, right? But normally in AAA realism stuff, we usually try to maintain some kind of veneer of plausibility. The idea that maybe these are like maintenance passages for whoever has to do work here, whoever had to work on this giant engine thing. I don't know. But also in the chat, McLoganog mentions that personally I'm okay with it being gaming architecture. I think it's the idea that it's supposed to feel weird and alien in it and incomprehensible, which is also a valid point, right? The point is that it doesn't feel human, so maybe that works. Oh. And look, they have this little diagram here to help sell the point that you needed all three of these things to function. So here this functions as a sort of hard gate that you would need to have all three of these powered in order to press that button. And then it swivels all these little bridges around. Why would we want to do that? Oh, and now we can climb this ladder. You would think this ladder kind of blends in with the rest of this scaffolding thing, which is interesting. I think I would have been too scared that players would miss it, and I probably would have put like blinking lights and stuff at the top and bottom of this ladder. You know, whatever alien OSHA agency manages the architecture here would not have been happy with that, right? Very unsafe. You would fail your safety inspection. Oh. Did it spawn some troops on me just now? Oh, right here. I guess that's also to draw your eye. Maybe if you were standing here and you weren't really sure where to go, they spawn some enemies here so that you can run over. So then that would catch your eye that you could run over here, or that's on the critical path. While I'm also talking, I believe there actually is a hidden timer with this whole set piece, where I believe if you take longer than about 20 minutes, then I believe the reactor does overload, and then I believe you die. Hey! So maybe I'll talk a little bit less and try to hurry up a little bit, because I believe there is a hidden timer. Oh, in the chat, Mega Spell asks, if there is a timer component, does that mean if you save pretty late with the hidden timer, does that mean you can potentially get yourself into an unwinnable unwinnable solution? Oh, I think I have to power that up. And I believe the answer to that is maybe, but it is theoretically possible via level scripting for you to detect when the player loads an autosave and potentially add a minimum amount of time back to the timer when the player loads their save. So potentially the level designer could have put in some fail-safe stuff in there. Whether they actually did, I don't know. I've always liked this beam texture a lot. I thought it looked so cool. Oh my god, what? Oh my god, all these enemies being spawned on me. Ah! Good thing there's these health chargers here. Oh my god. Duck into here. I believe now the set piece is I have to get over to the other end, but if I keep going, if I get hit by these, it hurts and pushes me back. So now you have to like play catch before it knocks you back. Or you don't even have to play catch, you can just kind of go back and forth between these things. This is a cool little machine thing here. Kind of reminds me of a mod called Minerva. If you like playing Half-Life 2 and you absolutely love Combine architecture, definitely play Minerva. It's by Adam Foster, who was probably one of the best level designers ever in like the history of level design, I think. Who now actually works at Valve doing level design. But Adam was just a fantastic level designer and just did amazing stuff with shapes. And you'll recall from last week, this is one of my favorite props in the whole Combine set right here. Just because I think it's super versatile. You can set this on the floor. It has weird feet. It has big, cool, chunky shapes. It has some nice color variation, and it's also a little bit glowy. It's all that good stuff. Oh gosh, and I think it's actually gotten a little bit bigger. Oh dear. What I like about the pacing here is that we keep looping back and forth in and out of this main room. So that also helps us track the progress we're making as well. Oh, and a cool thing that's happening here is that we have to time ourselves so that we don't get caught within this little refracty area. I also loved the burn effect right here. This looks really nice. But here's what happens if you get caught. You just get incinerated instantly. So be a little bit more careful this time. Oh yeah, in the chat, Toasty Toasty asks, what do you think Adam Foster is doing at Valve right now? I don't know. Probably working on Half-Life 3 or something. I mean, I hope they have Adam Foster working on Half-Life 3. Going on? Oh wait, I have to put a socket in through here. So I have to run all the way. Oh wait, no. How convenient. I was gonna have to backtrack all the way. And look, it's our good friend. Look at this. Look at this boy. Look, turns out he was keeping this little energy ball boy here for me this whole time. He was keeping it warm and safe. How nice. Oh, and then the chat people say there's a Half-Life comic called A Place in the West, and the writer there also works on an official Half-Life comic, or is A Place in the West an official Half-Life comic? I'm confused now, but it's okay. Now let's take this elevator. What's cool about the enemies in this whole sequence is that the enemies don't actually put up much of a challenge. The enemies here are functioning as set dressing to help make you think that the Combine are like resisting you and putting up a fight. It's to make the whole thing feel more urgent, even though it's actually not that urgent, and it's actually not that difficult to get rid of them. You have to ride this little merry-go-round. Ooh, to spice it up, there's a bunch of man-hacks who will push you off if you're not careful. So now it feels a little bit hectic riding this merry-go-round. And then we jump over to the other end. I like how at first this looks like a decoration. Is someone shooting at me? Excuse me, sorry. I like how these panels here help make the idea that's like this spinning like rotor reactor core thing, but it's also ends up being a functional set piece for us to platform on, and it will also play a role in this whole animation when we contain the core and stabilize it. So it's like multi-use, which is smart. Jump through all these little ventilation ducts. And now we're going back the other way through this giant little tube here. And we're also going backwards. Remember when we walked up a ramp that looked like this, and now we're going back down a ramp like this. Also, it's not animated, right? So really good use of symmetry here, I think, where it's showing us various pieces of the machine in various states of enabled or disabled state, and it also has us reverse back through this machine. which is cool. It gives it like a more real sense of place, I think. And oh, this is just a little nook for us to take a breather. Oh, or we can hop out here. Another nice thing here is that here we have we need the sparkly ball boys again, but here we can't backtrack necessarily to get one, and there's no generator to pull one out of. But here we're combining a previous set piece to feed into another set piece. So it's almost like this like Rube Goldberg thing that we're improvising, which is really nice level design. It's really, really solid. It's video gamey architecture, definitely, and it definitely doesn't feel like sophisticated literature, but it works. It does what it needs to do. Uh-oh. Why isn't this working? I think we have to duck down into here and fix something. And oh my god, it looks like all these Sparky boys are broken. And with all these big blinking red lights, we have to go grab a bunch. But now we did this one-way thing, so now there's no easy way for us to backtrack. Although it looks like there kind of is. We could probably trick jump our way up this piece of decoration. But now, it's like, oh no, what do we do? Is there another way we can get Sparky boys? And it turns out, we just had to look up here, and this is a ceiling opening back into the previous vent that we were in. Oh no! But now we have a new problem, right? Now we are locked out of the main room with no way back up here. So now we have to take one out, disable this. We have to selectively undo the puzzle. Oh no, I undid the wrong one. We have to selectively undo some of the puzzle and now redo it when we're in the right place. So it'll raise this maintenance lift back up. So this set piece is just really, really great, really solid. Whoever did this, good job. Oh yeah, and then back here, oh, I just killed myself. How did I just kill myself? Oops. I shouldn't just no-clip through a force field. That's maybe not the best look. Yeah, that puzzle is so good. Let's just solve it twice, you know what? But I also did want to show you one thing. Which is what some people were talking about in the chat. Which is, once you have this cool machine lock into place, but it turns out everything's broken, and we were trying to figure out where can we get balls, and that's where this set dressing comes in really handy. If you didn't have all those fog effects, if you didn't have the lighting, if you didn't have these sparks falling through the floor, if you didn't have these broken pipes, if you didn't have all this, in other words, decoration and environment art, it would have been really difficult for us to know that we could look up here to grab little sparkly balls. And this feeds into my argument where level design is extremely holistic. Environment art is part of level design. Lighting is part of level design. And I would argue that chopping it up, over-specializing it so much, making it so that one person did the gray box, one person does set dressing, one person does lighting, is overall a mistake, because a level is a combination of all these things working together. So if you over-specialize the job of level design too much, I think that's bad. Now, if we look here, This machine looks pretty cool, right? One other thing I like doing in this stream, if you haven't seen before, is I like turning on the wireframes. Wireframes tell you how the level was constructed, and if you see these red, pink wires, that means the level designer built it out of basic geometry. And anytime you see these blue turquoise wires, that would mean an environment artist built those props in like Maya or something and then brought it back in. And here we can see this machine is a clever combination of red and blue geometry that the level designer had to improvise and kit bash some random stuff together to make it look more like this bespoke machine that we see here. And I think the level designer did a pretty good job. It looks pretty interesting. And doesn't look like some weird low poly geometry, although it kind of does look like it. I don't know. I'm told Twitch compression does not like it when I make Twitch draw a bunch of thin wires everywhere, but too bad. I don't care. I'm gonna educate you no matter what, even if Twitch doesn't like it. And now that we have all three of these beams shooting their mega beams in there, Voltron has activated, and now those arms have bent down, and now that jelly boy right here is a happy jelly boy, no longer angry. It's just happy there, floating in space, and everything is okay. Our work here is done. Thank you, Voltron. And conveniently, the elevator leads us back, so we did this full circuit all the way around. Real smart. Ooh, I love the lighting here. Isn't that gorgeous? Like, just the bloom going on there. Brilliant. And now we get to surprise Alex.
You did it! The containment system's back in place. It won't last forever, but at least we've bought a little time. While you were in there, I did some poking around in the control data. They were trying to start a chain reaction, all right, but destroying the Citadel is just a side effect. Since we took out Brain's reactor, this is the only way they have to send a transmission packet back to wherever they came from. I can't tell what the packet contains, but it's important enough that they're willing to sacrifice the whole Citadel to send it off. We need to get it back to my dad and Dr. Kleiner at the outpost right away. I've been pulling down a copy. Whatever it is, I have a feeling it's bad news for all of us.
Oh no, she's sad. Don't be sad.
It's Judith. Take a look.
I'm fairly sure I've pinned down the location of the project.
So now that we completed that whole puzzle and set piece, we get cutscenes as a reward.
If it were discovered by the Combine, we'll need to take a close look at it, of course, but I should be able to give a better opinion within a few hours. If the site is where we think it is, then it should be no more than... I'm gonna cut this short. We may have been spotted.
Where the hell is she?
Oh my god. I liked her trench coat though. That was a very smart trench coat
She's in serious
for
trouble.
Michelle Forbes to wear.
We need to get this and the transmission packet to my dad. He'll know what to do with it. The packet's done copying. I've got it right here. Now let's get the hell out of here.
No, USB drive.
Uh-oh. I think they felt that. I've secured an exit elevator. It's this way. Come on.
Oh, in the chat, yeah, let's no clip around. Wait, let me turn on God mode in case I die again. So let's turn on God mode and check out how this whole thing was constructed. First of all, it's just one giant, massive map file, which is super cool. I'm a big fan of combining everything into one giant map file. No load screens. But we get to see how everything was structured, where here we had to go through all these different rooms. They all snake around to form this kind of triangle. If you've played Half-Life 1, this set piece is kind of similar a little bit to Blast Pit, If you remember Half-Life 1, where there's a scene where you're in a giant missile silo, and then there's these like tentacles, you know, that are like banging against the sides. Here we can see the construction of it. It's kind of mirroring that kind of pacing where we're kind of going up and down, snaking around this giant tunnel. And it also just juts out in really interesting ways. Like this big tunnel that we were in before, right? Super cool continuity. I love the shapes and triangles here. Yeah, and again, as McLoganog points out in the chat, 45-degree angle, off-grid, anything that's not just a boxy square construction is harder to do in the level editor. So anytime you see a lot of that, especially, oh my god, check that out. Oh, I love this hallway. Look at this hallway. It's so good. Anytime you see slightly off-angle construction like that, that is so annoying. Anytime you do that as a level designer, you have to be really sure that you really want to do that. Just because anytime you want to modify that, you have to manually realign all the textures, manually redo all the construction. Very annoying. But the lack of boxiness here is really nice. All the different shapes and silhouettes here going on here, really nice. Just some solid grade A level design happening here. Oh, in the chat, people are asking where was everything staged. So first of all, you might see these rooms. Anytime you see random rooms here, the rooms are usually used to house like game logic or something. Every like function you see during like a scripted sequence has to be floating somewhere, and it can't just be floating around in the vacuum of space. It has to be in a pressurized area. So hence, sometimes when you poke around Half-Life 2 levels, you're gonna see these big empty rooms that the player cannot get to. That's because there's invisible logic, there's invisible scripting and entity stuff going on, flowing around us, but we cannot see it. But it's there, believe me. Other stuff we can check out. Oh, that's where we'll be going later. Here we can see... Oh. Was that a render texture? Wait, so remember looking at this button before? I wonder how... I guess instead of making a texture for this, I thought they just did it in Photoshop, but actually this whole button got its own camera view, and then that camera view was like the security camera overlaid on top of the glass. That's super interesting. I didn't know they did the button like this. This button is also very Adam Foster-y too, although Adam Foster did not work on this episode, I believe. Oh, and look here. Oh my god, even the even our Jelly Boy gets his own little film studio. Oh, what is going on here? There's like these particles going inside. And then that's the camera view. That's our camera perspective, what's going on. I guess that's for the refraction. Maybe you need a separate room to do 2 passes on the refraction. I wonder why they did that. Super interesting. Let's see. Oh yeah, and then let's try to find the room where we saw Michelle Forbes in the Arctic in that very smart trench coat. Is she in here? Oh no, this is a Jelly Boy. This is another creepy character that we'll see later, I guess. Huh. Yeah, let's fly above. Maybe we missed it. Oh, it's over here. So this was the camera view we were seeing before, where we were seeing her dispatch, and then the robot punctured through here, and then here we can see there's a little Arctic scene right here. These textures look pretty low resolution. I wonder... I mean, they might have just been left over from Half-Life 2's development, where Half-Life 2 was supposed to have all this like glacier sequence and stuff. Placeholder objects, so we know where the player is. Oh no, and then they despawned all the NPCs. No one's there. Except this dead body. That's sad. But yeah, here's where the film was shot. CB Patter in the chat asks, are these camera rooms still just as common today? And sadly, I think the common way to do this, to do in-game cinematics now, is probably to record it, honestly, and do pre-rendered stuff, but pre-render it in the engine. And I think partly that's just to make it easier, partly because you have more control over it. You're only able to do all this in-game cinematic stuff if you build cinematic tools for your game. And if you don't want to go to all that effort and hassle, then it's often easier to just pre-render it because your artists already know Maya or whatever, and they can just pre-render it. One other reason why you might not want to do this, and why this has maybe fallen out of fashion perhaps, is that Half-Life 2, Episode 1, 2006, this is still when online, when digital distribution is still kind of in its infancy, so you might not necessarily download Half-Life 2 Episode 1, right? You might actually buy Half-Life 2 Episode 1 on a DVD. And one really good thing about scripted sequences is that they are very efficient in terms of disk space. If you try to pre-render this whole sequence in 1080p video, that takes up a lot more. You would need to put that on like Blu-ray or something in order to make that fit on your disc media. Fortunately now, we don't really use physical disc media anymore, so now disk space, I was going to say disk space and disk space are now not so precious anymore. So now there's not so much of a reason for you to try to skimp, compress everything, make sure everything's in-game sequences instead of pre-rendered. Now it's maybe more up to personal preference or what you prefer to do as a developer, or whatever the engine likes doing. But yes, maybe we should harken back to that era where games were not 100 gigabytes and taking up so much space. Oh, what are we doing here? Oh, it's super interesting that there's like a little room nook here, and it's all just texture lighting going on here. Huh, HDR. Anything else we need to look at? I think we captured a good sense of this whole structure. Again, notice all this copy and paste. Notice all the reused parts and stuff. It's good to reuse things. It makes the location feel consistent, and it helps you pad out your game length. Okay, let's continue. Run! Did they spawn enemies behind me? Why do we have to run? Yeah, not much urgency here. It's okay. Why is she? Okay.
Something tells me they don't want us reading their mail.
It's one of those automatic elevators,
Take us to a
huh?
train platform. If we can hitch a ride, it should take us straight out of the city. Hey, the gravity gun's back to normal. Well, it was nice while it lasted.
Wait, I didn't even notice that happened. Yeah, my gravity gun is back to normal. And I think I'm actually gonna stop here. Actually, sorry if the stream was lagging a little bit, but it's been about an hour, so I think I'm gonna maybe hold up right here. Anyway, thanks for tuning in for the last hour. Thanks for watching episode 1. Thanks for, oh my god, that alarm is so annoying. Thanks for hanging out. Catch me next time, next week, 2 to 3 p.m. Sorry, I have to stop. I have to prep. I have to teach a class in a little bit, so I really do have to stop. Thanks for hanging out, and maybe catch some of you also tomorrow, Thursday, where I'll be streaming on the NYU Game Center Twitch, where we're premiering a new talk show. It's going to be very exciting. It's going to be 2 hours of me talking. I don't know how I'm going to do 2 hours of talking. Oh my god, that really needs to stop. I'm going to mute that. If you want to watch 2 hours of me talk and try to play at being a TV host, then definitely check that out. That's 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the NYU Game Center Twitch. We'll be talking to some students. We'll also be having some special guests, playing some games. A lot of fun stuff. Whatever you do on a talk show, we'll do that stuff. So check that out. That's tomorrow or Thursday, 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Anyway, thanks for watching and have a good rest of your day. Bye.